This is the Murphy bed cabinet that I built for our spare bedroom, and most of the time it lives up against this wall, but anytime I would like, I can instantly convert it into a queen-size bed. I've built the more classic Murphy beds before, but they're pretty permanent. This design is easier to move, doesn't need wall anchoring, and uses a trifold mattress instead of a bulky one-piece mattress. I designed this project to have two power strips, one on either side of where you're sleeping, for easy charging. Also, a large drawer for bedding storage or whatever a guest might want to put in there after the bedding is made on the bed. And most importantly, I designed this project to be as simple as possible, to be made as simple as possible, so that hopefully I can inspire others to make their own Murphy bed cabinet. For this project, I'm using pre-finished maple, both sides, which comes in big 4x8 sheets like this. Other plywoods that are cabinet grade would work just fine for this project as well, but I do like the pre-finished stuff because it's got a nice, hard, durable, clear coat on the surface, and you pair that with a nice pre-finished edge banding and hot melt that onto it, trim up the edges and add some pocket holes to hide the joinery, and that's the whole project in a nutshell. For those interested, I do have PDF plans available on my Etsy store, which I will link down in the description below, which will be a nice pairing with this video if you decide to take on this project. I'm also going to add links to tools and hardware, which should help clarify what I'm using for this project. But also, if you click these links and purchase from them, I end up getting a small commission, which really ends up helping out the channel. To cut out this plywood, all you really need is a circular saw and a straight edge of some sort. And I'll be using that with a combination of my table saw for more of the finished cuts when I can use the table saw for the finished cuts, that is. Because these pieces are going to be so big, some of the finished cuts I will be using my circular saw and a straight edge. Edge banding is a pretty simple process, but it does take a bit of trial and error, so I recommend getting a scrap piece of wood that you're intending to cut out of, or actually it doesn't even have to be the exact stuff if you don't want to, waste the material you just bought. But it's really important to clamp it down in some fashion. I've got a vise right here that I like to edge band with. You can clamp it to the edge of your workbench. There's lots of different ways to do it, but you're going to want to clamp it down. And then the edge banding, you're going to want to make sure it has a little bit of overhang on either side. And you can cut that off or break it off. And then first thing I like to do is take my hot iron, which I turn up pretty close to max. Yeah, I've got it turned up to the max heat. You can feel the edge. You want to make sure you have overhang on both sides pretty evenly. A quick tack down, and that's not the final one by any means. It just tacks it down, and you can make sure you still have overhang from the edge on either side. And then I like to take a wood block, hold this down until it starts to smoke. Yep, I see it. And then just kind of work it back and forth, kind of rocking it a little bit, and really push that hot melt adhesive down into the end grain of the plywood. Something I've seen other people do, and it works pretty well, is to just snap this off. You can flex it and just snap it off. And that'll get you pretty good results, but the next level is definitely an edge banding edge trimmer. And so the edge banding edge trimmer is just nice because it's just like a little guillotine that just quickly snaps off the edges. Yeah, So those ends are looking really nice. And then at this point, I would usually take my laminate file, which is not a normal file. This is less aggressive, and it can really just kind of glide over like a laminate surface. And I'll usually just square up that edge, because if there's little fuzzies that kind of overhang, sometimes that'll get into the next edge that you're about to edge band, if you're going to edge band the next edge, that is. So I'll do that real quick. And then now I've got my overhang. There's two ways I like to get rid of this edge here, this overhang. Let me show you guys how much overhang there is too, by the way. I don't know if that's going to show up very well, but it's not very much. You can also get wider edge banding so you have a bigger overhang, but this one is pretty minimal. There's not a lot of waste with this one, but the better you get at it, you don't really need really wide edge banding to get the same results. And so this is an edge trimmer, and it just has two razor blades on the inside, and you just apply pressure this way, and then that's it. And you have a trimmed edge. So that's definitely the quickest method to go by. And then I take my laminate file and I'll just quickly run it along the top and just remove any little bits of hot melt adhesive that kind of caked onto the edge a little bit. So right here I have some hot melt glue that you can see I'm kind of removing with my fingernail. And you can just kind of scratch it off, but you can also use a laminate file to just remove that glue just a little bit better. Yeah. And then now you're left with a really crisp, sharp, 90-degree edge. And so I take that same laminate file, and at about a 45-degree angle, you can just run over it and knock off that sharp edge. Yeah, and then do the same thing to the other side. Other than using this, which this is not a very expensive tool and it works really well, but sometimes you do get just a little bit of tear out in the grain of the wood. And so if you're looking for a really nice edge and you don't want to risk any tear out because maybe the edge is particularly visible, I highly recommend using a laminate trim bit, which is just, it has a bearing that it runs along this edge, and then it has blades that just remove that edge that you just made, or that removes that overhang. And this way definitely works the best. It takes a little bit longer, and sometimes I've found there is a bit more glue cleanup with the file with this method, but the results are far superior to this trim tool. On this project, I go back and forth, actually. If it's not a very important edge, and I definitely want the wood edge look still, but it's just not that important, I'll use this tool. And then if it's very visible, like the top edge of the project where you're going to be seeing it all the time, I did take the extra time to use a router with a trim bit to just make it really nice. And then it would be the same exact thing. Use the laminate file to remove any glue, and then hit it at a 45-degree angle to just knock off that sharp edge. When pocket holing, it's important to make sure your bit is set at the correct 3/4 inch depth. That's super important. And then whatever jig you have, doesn't have to be this specific one, there's also usually a way to adjust this mechanism, and this one is also set for 3/4 inch because my material is 3/4 inch. Actually, it's just a hair under 3/4 inch, but that'll work just fine for this. And then all you do, put your workpiece in the jig, get your holes, and then now you have pocket holes. And then for putting the screws in place, I always like to clamp the workpieces down in some fashion. There's different ways you can do that. You could obviously just clamp them with clamps if you have long enough ones to clamp your materials in place, such as that. Make sure it's flush on one side. And if you don't clamp it down, you're gonna have a little bit of a shift. And it's really annoying. So I highly recommend to use clamps, maybe some CA glue with accelerator spray to just tack it together, or brad nails through the face to tack it together temporarily until you get the pocket hole screws, which is gonna give a lot more strength. But for this project, in all the visible areas anyways, I'm not gonna use any brad nails because I don't wanna fill any holes. So I'm pretty much limited to clamping or CA glue to tack everything together. Don't use an impact driver, because an impact driver is just gonna drill or is gonna screw this screw in all the way through the face. And because you don't wanna be filling any holes with this project, you wanna make sure that the screw gets set deep enough to have a strong hold, but not so deep that it shows up on the other side. So this drill, I've got it set to 10, 11, 12, so it slips pretty easily. It should allow it to get pretty tight without going through. Yep, didn't go through. So you hear that slipping, so that's kind of ensuring that I don't drive this screw in too deep, basically. And then hopefully I didn't have any shifting. Nope, that's looking nice and flush. And I'm not gonna use any glue for extra hold, but if you wanted to have just a little bit more hold for this project, you could always scuff up this pre-finished surface and add a glue to it to just make it hold a little bit better. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about before I fully get going on this project is talk about a self-centering drill bit. So this little drill bit has a little spring mechanism, and inside of it is a drill bit. And so this is really nice for installing hardware, and I'm gonna say is a pretty essential part to this project, because when you're installing hardware, if you don't have the hole perfectly centered when you screw in the hole, a lot of times that hardware will shift a little bit, and so it just becomes really frustrating if you don't have centered holes. This isn't the only way to center a hole, but it is the easiest, quickest way. Highly recommend picking up one of these if you don't have one. I usually end up drawing all my creations on paper first, but this time I just decided to use a 3D CAD type of program. And I really like this program, highly recommend it. It's called Tinkercad, and it's super simple. Watch a 10-minute tutorial and you'll be off and running and have a pretty good time using it. Overall, it's the simplest one I've ever come across. The whole program is based on adding shapes and taking away shapes. So this is the whole Murphy bed cabinet, completely closed up and put away. This is the Murphy bed cabinet all laid out. And then this is the same exact thing, but without the doors. I took the doors off so that you could see this internal structure. There's also nothing wrong with putting your plans out on paper, but now that I've started using Tinkercad, I'm just gonna keep using it. It's really simple, really quick, and a good way to wrap your head around anything three-dimensional. So the first part of this build, first it'll just be 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4 pieces. So I'm gonna get those 4 pieces cut out and edge band this top edge, this side edge right here, or the front edge, and this front edge, and that's gonna be it at this point. As I said in the intro, this project, the purpose of this project is to make it as simple as I possibly could imagine it, and using pre-finished plywood on both sides, and then also pre-finished edge banding will do just that. It's really not too different than the type of furniture you would get from IKEA or Walmart, except for, and this is a very important part of it, that it's plywood and not pressboard or MDF. This is going to be a much longer lasting piece of furniture that should take dents halfway decently and should be pretty water resistant for surface water splashing on it. This should last, unless something really bad happens with it, should last my entire life. If you're wanting to make a Murphy bed project and make it a little fancier looking, there's nothing wrong with copying my design and just painting it or adding another outside piece. If you can alter the design to fit how you'd like it to look. For me personally, it is a little painful that I'm not using any hardwood, but I'm okay with that. Like I said, I've pretty much decided that show you guys that you can complete a project with a really high quality product at the end with just using plywood and edge banding. And the edge banding only adds to the look. You're covering up the plywood edges so that it doesn't look like plywood furniture anymore. Now it's going to look more like hardwood, more or less, because that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a really thin layer of hardwood all around the furniture. Here's a quick tip for cutting plywood. Lay down a sheet of foam board underneath and set your saw blade so that it just barely cuts into the foam. This fully supports the plywood, helps prevent tear out, and keeps the wood from sliding around. Always a little bit of a tricky thing, moving plywood around. Whether it's in a small space or a big space, this is a small space, makes it a little bit more challenging even. 21 7/8. When breaking down plywood, I like to cut my pieces just a little bit oversized. This way, I can trim them to their final size on the table saw, giving me cleaner, more precise edges while avoiding any flaws from the factory edge. This is definitely a nice thing if you had a track saw. A lot of the nicer track saws have like a pretty good dust collection system as well. Whereas mine doesn't. Not at all. Not at all. I built this crosscut sled to be able to cut big panels squarely, like this big panel right here. I made it to fit only one slot so that it's just lighter weight. good way to check if something's square is to go corner to corner and check this diagonal. So I'm 63 and 11. 63 and 11. Okay, so this thing is pretty square, and I'm ready for the next panel. I need these pieces to be 41.5-inch long, but first I'm going to rough cut them to 42 inches. Just so I remember, that's a nice square edge, finished edge, I should say, but also square to this. I could draw a little right angle here, but I know this is the rough edge, so that's what I'm going to have to rip off in a minute. And I'll probably rip off of both edges, actually. But this is my reference edge, I should say. Okay, now I've got two edges that are nice and square, so I can run everything off of those two edges. The reference edge that I just squared up is right here. So that's going against the fence. I know my fence is very square to the miter slots and to the blade. So I'm going to do a rough cut on one edge first. I'm going to go 3/8 past that to make it 23 7/8. Keeping my pile of cutoffs over here. I'll use them when I can for future cuts. Now I'm going to go right at 23.5. Quickly check how square it is. 40, 40. right there. Sweet. Pretty darn square. All right, I need to get one more piece cut out. So this one needs to be 60 by 38.5. So first I'm going to rough cut it on this, obviously, and then I'll bring it to my table saw to get the nice, crisp, accurate cuts. But if you don't have a big table saw that you can make accurate cross cuts and rip cuts on, nothing wrong with a circular saw to get your finished cuts. You just have to really make sure your circular saw is dialed in to a really accurate 90, and it'll still work perfectly fine for this project. You don't have to have a table saw. So my final cut will be 60, and this one I'm gonna go to about 60.5. All right, now for my final cut, 38.5 along that edge. Okay, so now for the tricky cut. It's so wide that it's going to be tough to square up this edge to this edge using my crosscut sled. Yeah, that's too big. So that means I'm going to have to square up this edge and this edge using my circular saw. I just can't cut it on my table saw. It's just a little too big. Okay, I'm gonna say that edge is good. This edge. And I'm gonna use my marking blade instead of just a pencil for this one. So I want it to be exactly 60 inches. And so this is a good point to double and triple check your measurements and make sure that before you actually cut this edge, that it's as square as you can make it, basically. Yep, I am pretty close on that. $71 and 5/16 plus just the tiniest little bit. $71 and 1/4. So I'm a 1/16 inch off, which is the most amount of air that I've got so far. But it should still be okay. That's pretty good there. It's really pretty close. Check the length of it. Right at 60 plus just the tiniest little hair. And then I'm right at 60. It's good enough for this project. But the less air that you can come up with, the better everything's just gonna assemble together. So I need to edge band 2 of these edges. 2 of these edges, which is the same size piece as that other one. And then, let's see, on this guy, just 1 edge, one of the long edges. So I'm gonna start with this edge first. It won't be as visible as the other edges. And that kind of gives me a practice piece before I start doing the edges that will be visible all the time. Yeah, and it really turned out pretty good. Pretty happy with that one. It's really important to get good adhesion with the edge banding, because if you don't fully melt the glue or fully push the glue into the plywood, years down the road, you could have a problem where the edge banding actually starts to lift off or completely pop off the edge of the plywood. So it's definitely worth taking your time to just slow down and make sure you get good adhesion and proper bonding of that edge band. So this edge has been edge banded now, and so is that, and it's really looking pretty good. Now that I've got them edge banded, I can get some pocket holes, and you can get away with using just a small little pocket hole jig like this. I've used it a lot. It works great. And it's great for 3/4 inch material all the way up to 1.5 inch material. And then I also have this here, and this is a great upgrade. This one costs a little bit more. It was a little over $100, and really like this pocket hole jig as well. And I even have a bigger one. I have the automated one, but I'm not going to use that today. I'm going to just show you guys how I use a regular manual pocket hole jig. Right now I've got this piece made, this piece made, this piece made, and this piece. So I'm going to add pocket holes right here going into this piece, and then I'm going to add pocket holes going up into that piece. Let's see, and then this piece, there will be pocket holes underneath it going into that board right there. And you really want to keep an eye on this little gauge right here, because if for some reason it moves, you're going to be drilling too deep, and then when you pop the screws in, it's going to pop out through the side and mess up your pre-finished piece of plywood. So those are all looking pretty good. I didn't punch through with my drill bit, which is a good sign. Sometimes I find that the drill bit does punch through the top edge a little bit, and that means it probably went a little too deep. Put this off to the side for a hot sec. This board is ready. And now, for arguably one of the more difficult parts, is the assembly. So I need to cut some small blocks. I'm going to just cut 11-inch blocks. So I'm going to actually cut these long. Let's see. I'll use this piece back here. I'm going to cut them right at 11 inches. There. So that's going to go to the back of the cabinet, and these are going to be my spacers that the next bigger piece is going to be sitting on. I'm going to trim this edge after I install this top piece. So since since my workstation is nice and flat, I can really utilize it as a surface to glue things up on and make sure everything gets square. You can always just use, whatever surface you have, but if you really want a nice glue up, it is nice to have a very flat surface. So a lot of times when I'm putting things together, I'm just tacking things together with a brad nailer, an 18 gauge brad nailer, but I don't want any nail holes. So temporarily, I'm going to be tacking everything together with CA glue and accelerator spray. Like this. Try to make everything as flush as you can. This has kind of got a little bit of a bow, so to make it just a little flatter, I'm just going to clamp it down. And that should be perfectly fine. And once I tack it in place, I'm going to have to very carefully slide this out and add the pocket holes into it. To make the glue adhere just a little bit better, I'm going to use a little bit of sandpaper to just scuff up the edge and get a nice little bit better mechanical bond. The strength is not going to be coming from this glue. It's just a temporary hold until I can get screws in there. So that's about the area that I'm going to be scratching up here. Really want to get dust out of there the best you can. I have to be super careful to not break this apart. It wouldn't be the end of the world if it does, but as I've been saying, I'm just doing this temporarily until I can get a couple screws in there. Okay, so really carefully, I'm going to try to expose one of those pocket hole screws. Okay, and I didn't go through the other side. Thank goodness. You don't want to do that. Now I'm going to go to the other side. Now I think I could probably do the other side, and then I'll flip it up and get the rest of the screws in after I get the other side done. But this is still super fragile, and I just have to be really careful. Use my sandpaper. Put the accelerator spray down, line up my edges. Well, this board apparently has a bow. Oh, geez. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to say that was a failure. That worked a lot better on the other side. Okay, I'm gonna scrape that glue off. Well, I don't have big enough clamps to clamp this whole thing down. Gotta think about that for a second. Well, I think what I'm gonna do is apply glue. I'm not gonna put the accelerator spray on. That way I have a little bit more working time. And I'm gonna clamp a board behind it. So pretending this is that side panel piece that I'm putting on. Let's see, you really want to lock this down pretty good now. So this will be like that. And then this is going to get clamped down like this. So now I got this clamped pretty well. So now I can add the accelerator spray and kind of just seep it into that edge to harden my glue. And then I'm going to wait probably 5 minutes for that to set up before adding a couple pocket hole screws. So just like with the other side, I got to be really careful about sliding this thing. I want just enough exposed to get a screw in. Next side. Okay, so I think I'm going to put this at a diagonal really carefully. Same thing, I just want to be really careful to make sure I don't punch through the sides. Okay, I got all my screws in. So that's the top edge over here, this is the bottom edge. And now I can get these guys in place. Definitely want my most square edge against this, which I've got those marked. Just temporarily clamp these in place. Make sure everything is pretty flush. Take my sandpaper and just barely scuff up this surface. So I can lay that down for a second. That's a nice tight fit in there, pretty tight. And now, add some of this glue. Hold that for a second. If I let go. Yep. Okay, so far so good. Now I can add some screws in. I'm gonna get one in this top corner first. And then get one in this top corner. Now I can remove these supports, which I will be using shortly, actually. So from here, I've got 29 3/4. Should be right at 29 3/4, yep. And right in the middle should be, okay, so it's bowing this way. So I'm just gonna add a piece to push it down close to the middle, about right there. So I'm just going to push it in until right here it says 29 3/4. Right about there. And I'll mark it. And then that's the line I need to push this to. You can see that. So all I got to do is line up that mark right there, and then I'm going to clamp this board, and I should be at 29 3/4. Yep. Right on. Okay, now I'm going to add some screws in the back. So I need to very carefully flip this up. So I want to make my mark at 11 3/8. Eleven 3/8. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just finding the center point of the piece of plywood on the other side, and I'm gonna trace a line, and that will be my line to put screws into. I got my line. Now I can start popping some screws in. And so with these screws, I'm going to use this little black screw right here. It has an auger tip and is a square drive. And you don't need to pre-drill with them, really. But I'm going to, just because I really don't want to split out this plywood. And so pre-drilling the hole just helps ensure that this plywood doesn't separate as much, or at all, hopefully, and you won't see a little bulge on the other side of the visible part of the plywood. Oh no. So see that? I did have some screws pop through. That's better on the underside than the top side. Not ideal. Actually, I'm gonna back those out and put a hole right next to it. So this is the part that's not visible, so it doesn't really matter too much. It is nice to get them flush. So that's where that screw, I backed it out and put a new one in. But I'm just gonna flush that up real quick with this sanding block. And I don't mind scratching it up down here, because nobody will see it. So these pieces are going to go about like this. Like that. And I'm going to cap over this top part with a piece. I need to cut these down a little bit so it's 3/4 of an inch under this edge. And then this cavity that will be right here, I have some recessed outlets that are just plug and play. You plug it into your 110 outlet, which will be running through this cavity out the back, and will just be on the side, and so that anybody who's sleeping on this bed can plug in their laptop or their phone, whatever they want to charge or give power to. It's a small feature, but it seems like it would be a really nice one. So, especially because I'm eventually going to have bookshelves probably on either side of this, and it's just going to be really difficult to have access to that outlet behind this cabinet. So I need these pieces to be 3 3/4 by 11 inches. They're long. Double check one more time. Yep, nice and square. This side looks slightly better than this side, so I'm gonna put pocket holes into this side. So there I've got my pocket holes, and I can work on getting these installed. Don't really need to worry about these pieces just yet. Okay, now I'm gonna barely force that up And then I'm going to pop a screw right in the top right there. Yeah, about like that. I'm just going to use a clamp to get some leverage. So this screw that I'm going to put in will be visible, and for that reason, I am going to measure out my screw mark so that it's symmetrical from one side to the other. I'm just going to plop one in right there. I want it about right there. So I'm going to go 3 1/4. And then I'm going to go down 3/8 of an inch. And that will give me that spot. I'm just going to go ahead and mark the other side too. I am going to add in a couple more screws. I definitely want to mark them. Like I said, this will be a visible side, and so any visible screws you want to make sure that they look pretty good. So I'm going to go 3/4 from the edge, down 3/8. Same thing on this side. Measure out 3/4 of an inch. Down 3/8. So if you're wondering, what is 3/8? So 3/8 is just half of 3/4 of an inch. And so that puts me right in the center of this board. I'm going to cut it, I'm going to slip it under here, and I'm going to, let's see, so drawer slides are going to be connected to this. So I don't want pocket holes. Or since it's really not going to be visible, just put screws right through the face. Just keep it simple. You know, I really don't think it's going to be that visible, so I'm going to do that. 3 inches. And this side's a little bit looser, not quite as tight as the other side, so I'm going to actually shim it slightly. So these screws need to be at 3 7/16. 2 inches from the bottom. I'll do 3 inches from the top. And then split the difference. 16, so 8 inches in between, approximately. That's pretty close. I went 3 from the top, 2 from the bottom, and 8 in between about. And then 3 7/16. Should get my spacer in there. So pretty close. It's on a cart, 2 carts. So now I can just wheel it around wherever I want it to go. These little dollies, by the way, I would say is an essential part of my small 20-foot by 20-foot shop that I've got. It allows me to have a big cabinet project like this, and I can wheel it around and move it out of the way. So highly recommend picking up some of these. I got them at Harbor Freight. I don't remember how much they were, but it wasn't too much, and sometimes you can find them on sale. Okay, so the piece that I'm talking about right now is this top part. So this back piece is going to be fixed in place, and then this one is going to hinge over, so it kind of looks like that. But I just need to worry about making that piece first. So it's all going to be flush all the way around. I'm going to edge band 3 sides. So this is 61.5 by 23.5. It's probably better to have the stationary piece just be slightly longer than the front piece that will hinge. So I'm actually just going to cut it right at 11 3/4. So 11 3/4. Wear a mask. Well, I seem to be having an issue. A little bit of tear out, which I wasn't having up until right now. So I'm going to use a different cross-cutting method. See if I can get something a little better. See how this goes. Definitely a lot better. For whatever reason, I was getting tear out. Probably there was a little tiny bit of wobble, and I think this is just a more secure way of cross-cutting. And so I'm going to just take off a little tiny bit more off of this edge, and then cut off from that edge right at 61.5 inches. I'm gonna do 3 sides edge banding on the back piece and all 4 sides for the front piece. I think what I'm going to do, install this thing onto this piece, put screws into it, and then I'm going to edge band it over the top of the screws so you won't even see the screws. I think that's what I'm going to do. So I want this piece to fit in between perfectly. So I'm going to measure the back part of this, and that's what I'm going to base this off of. It should be right at 60. We're like really close. I'm at like 60 and a 16th. 60 and a 16th. And I don't think I'm going to have it too far back. Yeah, maybe just like, maybe a 1/2 inch. I don't think that'll get in the way. Yeah, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch. And I really want to make sure I've got the 3/4 inch space on either end. And a really simple way to get it centered is actually just find the center point of both this piece, some 61.5, 30 3/4. And I'm going to use this for the edge banding, actually, for this one. It'll be in the shadows. This part will never really be seen, but still, when people are sleeping in this bed, I don't want them to look up and see the plywood edge. So I'm still going to cover it after I'm done here. 60, so 30, and 32nd. So I got my center line right here, got my center line right here, and all I'm doing is matching them. And that should get me a nice and even centered board here. I can take my tape measure and double check, but it should be pretty good. And that's the same thing there. So with these brad nails, I'll be able to just barely tack it down and get it in place, all lined up and straightened out, so that I can come through and put screws in through the top, and then I'm going to edge band the top, and then you won't see any of the screws, and this is just going to add a little extra support for this lengthy board. It's not going to hold the weight of a human, but books, or if we were to just put something up there, I just don't want it to bow very much. So this is going to add just a little bit of extra strength. Oh, and actually, before I do this, I'm going to add some pocket hole screws. Right here, right there. Okay, wow. Really glad I didn't forget that, because this is important. You'll see why in just a few minutes. Before I screw it down, I want to make sure that the fit is nice, because it's a lot easier to adjust right now than once I screw it down and then edge band it. I think that's looking pretty close, pretty good. Wouldn't mind just like the tiniest amount shaved off of right there. So I think I'm going to use my chisel actually. I just need the tiniest bit shaved off. It's really not much. Let's see, so I need this to go down 5/16 of an inch. So I need this guy to be taped at 5/16 of an inch. This is one that I really don't want to punch through, because the top side will be extremely visible. So I really want to make sure that this doesn't go too deep. Now to cover all those little screw holes, I'm going to use some more edge banding. Now I'm going to use this instead of my router just because I really don't mind this edge being a little rougher. Okay, that's ready for install. I'm just going to add a couple pocket holes. So I need this 10 inches from the back. And then same thing on the other side. I'm going to double check that real quick. Yep, 10 inches looks good. Got it set to 3/4 of an inch. Do the same thing over here. Yeah, it's a little bit visible, but really not too bad. Okay, that's looking great, actually. Perfect. Okay. And the main part is done. So these are my main two hinge options. One of them's called a decorative utility hinge, and I think this is actually kind of what I'm leaning towards using. Small little decorative hinge, and it'll just sit like that. And that's kind of what I'm thinking I'm probably going to go with. But I also have these other ones that I could cut out a little space and then have these slide right into it, and so the only thing that would be exposed is the top part of the hinge. You know, you just see that little round part. But I'm kind of leaning towards these. I like the simplicity, and I think it's a nice look. Yep, it's settled. I'm using decorative hinges. 4 is going to be enough. That'll be fine. Something kind of like that. So I want these spaced pretty evenly. First I'll just go ahead and install these. That kind of looks good. About, maybe I'll go closer to 2.5 inches in. Looks good. Make sure the end is nice and flush before you screw together your hinge. Now I want these two centered right in between these other two. 4.5 divided by 3 spaces equals 18, just a little over 18, about 18 1/8 actually, from the center of this hinge. Okay, that's nice and even. That's an easy one to mess up though. So just to reiterate what I did, I went from the center of this hinge to the center of this hinge, and then divided that by the 3 spaces there are to get the center point of these hinges. That's how I did it. I'm using a self-centering drill bit. It's a pretty nice little thing. Perfect for hinges and all kinds of different hardware that you need to install. Drawer slides. Yeah, it's great. Ah. Before I go much further, I'm just going to quickly bring in my bed and make sure it fits. Because it should fit, but I just want to make sure. Like a glove. So I'm going to build these with little tiny wheels on the bottom. These are supposed to be 1-inch wheels, and I just measured them. They're actually almost a whole 1/8 inch over an inch. So I know my height here is going to be 11. Yep, right at 11. So I need this to be 11. But I have these little pieces, so I know that has to be, I need to subtract. I'm actually going to go 9 7/8. And that should give me just the tiniest amount of wiggle room. Not even quite a 1/16 inch of wiggle room, but hopefully it keeps it from all pinching and I don't have to take it apart and redo these slides if they don't work right. So for this first one, I can have it go as deep as this can go. So I'm seeing 21 7/16. And on this side, same thing, 21 7/16. 21 3/8. Just give myself a 1/16 inch of wiggle room. Let's see what the open measurement is. So the open measurement is, or the opening measurement, it's 52 7/16 on the top. 52 7/16. So 2 pieces at 21 3/8 by 9 7/8, and then 1 piece at 49 15/16 by 9 7/8. Combined, the height of these guys, 1 7/16. So they're not quite 3/4 of an inch each. So I need to make sure that this next piece is a 1/16 of an inch longer than I was originally thinking. So. $49 15/16 plus a 1/16 of an inch. So right at 50. Just to clarify how I'm getting these measurements, you have the opening space that you need to measure, and then you need to subtract the thickness of the 2 drawer slides, which in this case, each drawer slide is a 1/2 inch. So I have 1 inch subtraction, and then I need to subtract the thickness of the 2 pieces of plywood that are sandwiching around the length of board that I'm trying to find. First thing, I'm just gonna tack it in place with this. I'm pretty sure this edge is gonna be completely hidden, so I'm not too worried about screw holes or nail holes. I'm just gonna pop 2 or 3 in and just kind of pin it in place quickly. Okay, that's looking good. Get a couple screws in there. Three screws should be enough for that side. In this video, that was one of the few times you've seen me using my sanding block to knock off sharp edges, but all the edges, whether it's with the laminate file or the sanding block or just a little bit of sandpaper, all edges get slightly rounded over so that they're not super sharp, because a 90-degree edge is sharp enough that it can cut you. So you really want to just knock off all sharp edges. All right, let's see the height of this bad boy. Should be right at 11. And it is. Right at 11. Which is exactly what I wanted. So, perfect. Let's find the center point, which is about right there. And then my drawer slide. 1 3/4 inches.
sure the spacer still fits. Okay. Yep, looking good.
Okay, lots of good support. Okay, so the next one I need to be 20.5 inches by, let's see, get the inside measurement here, which is right at 50. And then the slides are each a 1/2 inch. So that'll be, I need to take away an inch. So it'll be 49 inches minus 1 7/16. Because I'm going to sandwich it around 2 pieces of plywood. It's a 47 9/16. $47 9/16. Okay, just tacking that in place. I'm going to quickly edge band these pieces, although actually I should really make sure this is fitting right. So I should have an inch of space at the bottom, like almost exactly an inch of space. There you go, you can see that space now. Yep, exactly 1 inch. Perfect. Okay. Before I put the drawer slides on, I'm going to quickly edge band it. This should be a little bit easier to put these slides on compared to the other one, because I don't have to go into a cabinet. I can do it all right here on this bench. Let's see, so it'll be like this. Okay, next side. Sweet. There we go. Next, I need to build a big drawer to hold pillows and blankets and that kind of stuff. So let's see, the inside needs to be 19 3/4. 19 3/4 by 47 9/16. 47 9/16. So 47 9/16 minus 1 inch equals 46 9/16. And I'm gonna have the 3/4 inch plywood on either side of it. So it actually ends up being 1 inch and 7/16. So it's going to end up being 45 1/8. Now I'm going to take the time to edge band these pieces. I'm probably actually going to need to trim them down again because I really need them as close as I possibly can to 9 7/8 of an inch. And right now that's what they're cut at, but with the addition of the edge banding, it's going to be just under a 1/16 inch addition. So I'm going to have to knock that off to make sure that it fits just perfectly. This is the worst tear out I've had, actually. It's just this little tiny bit right here. And so this is the kind of thing that you can avoid if you use a router and a trim bit. But, you know, it's really not that bad. Here, I'll try to do a close-up of it. So that's the worst of it, and it's really not that bad. Definitely a manageable or a reasonable amount of error. But depending on how picky you want to be, that might be a good reason why you might want to use this or a router with a trim bit. But it really doesn't bother me too much on the inside of a drawer like this. So I'm going to do the next one the same way. Now for a few pocket holes. Got those situated. I got one more to do. I do need to make sure these are right at 9 7/8 inch thick. So I'm going to quickly trim that, which is not going to be much. Okay, so to just tack it in place, I'm going to use my nail gun again. I will result in a couple little pinholes, but I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. And of course, you could also add any kind of glue you want in there, but I think this is going to have plenty hold just with screws. You want to be really careful not to punch through, just like on all these pocket hole screws. Got to be really careful. Now for a simple drawer bottom, I just need to cut out a piece that just fits inside here. All right, so this is going to be my final thickness right here, or my final rib. 18 3/16. .45 1/8. 45 1/8. Sweeping up the dust. An endless endeavor. And sometimes I just don't. And I'm walking in mounds and mounds of sawdust. Then I end up tracking it in the house. Since I didn't glue this box together, or this drawer together, I can actually just remove the very last screw and allow it to move just a little bit. It doesn't need to move much. Like a 32nd of an inch is all I really need. It is going to make it easier to fit. There we go. And I don't want it sitting proud. I don't want it popping out at all this way. If anything, I want it going in. But really, I'm just aiming for it to be flush. It's tight enough. I don't think I'm going to need to clamp it because it's pretty tight. But I'm going to pop one screw in, see how it goes, decide if I need to pin it in place with some brad nails or clamp it, whatever I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with this guy. Yeah, perfect. And then this is sinking in just a little too far. Just put a temporary screw in there, and I think I am going to use a brad nail to just pin it in place. Perfect. Now I've got my drawer. I can add my wheels. Need to be really careful with this edge since the opposite side of this is my finished edge banding. Drawer slides are done. And I get to test the fit, get to see how far out it goes, see if I have to do any adjustments on the first slides that I did, which I might have to, and hopefully all my math was right and this is gonna work out. If not, might have to do some adjustments. And adjustments I did have to do, unfortunately. Originally, all these slides were 18 inches, and I found that the first and the second set of slides I had to change to 20-inch slides. The last slide for the drawer that I'm pushing in right now, those ones stayed 18 inches. And another problem I made was the very first set of slides I had recessed slightly back from the front edge, and that was a mistake. I redid those so that they were flush with the front, which is what all the slides need to do. They all need to be installed at the very front of each of these sections. Getting 79 1/4. So I'm right at 60. I'm right at 60 off the ground. So let's see. And actually, I think I'm just going to come right up to the bottom here. Maybe just barely overlapping. So like an 1/8 over. So I'm going to go 10 1/16. And so I'm going to leave a 3/4 inch space basically between this piece and this piece. So there will be a big space right there. And what that'll allow is if you accidentally bring this door down before you pull out the drawer, it doesn't break the door. Otherwise, there's going to be a piece here, and you're going to put pressure on this drawer front, and it'll break the hinge. So to keep that accident from happening, I'm just gonna leave some space, quite a bit of space. So if you accidentally start to tilt it out, it won't just break on you. Let's see. So the inner was 60. I'm gonna leave just a hair under 1/8 of an inch on either side, and I am gonna put edge banding on it. So I do need to put that, especially on the side to side. I need to plan for that. I'm gonna go 59 3/4. In this case, it's definitely better to go too big because you can always chop off a little bit more and add more edge banding. Okay, and I'm going to edge band the top first. I don't need to worry about the bottom edge. And I'll do the sides second. And then I'm going to drill a hole that's too big for this, but big enough, but small enough that the head will fit over the top of it. And this will allow for adjustment, so I can move it up, over, just a little bit, and be able to get the fit just perfect before I put more screws in to completely stabilize everything. All right, let's see this fit without any adjustments. It's definitely a little bit off, but not too bad. All right, so the space is a little small on that side. The height is looking okay. It needs to come up slightly over here. Let's try that. Yeah, that's looking pretty good now. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's pretty dead on, actually. Now I can just add screws like normal. Places around. Double check the fit before I put too many more screws in. That's looking really good. These are 1 inch and 1 1/4 inches, so it's not going to be sticking out the other side unless you drive it in too far. So you got to be really careful to make sure you don't punch out through the front, because then you'll see that screw. And actually, while I'm down here, I'm just gonna add the handle right in the middle of this thing. So this is exactly 3 inches from center to center. So I'm going to find my center point. 29 7/8 is center. Double check the other side. Yep, that's looking pretty good. Because it's 3 inches, I'm gonna measure out 1.5 inches. Oh, actually I should probably find the center of this first. Let's see, so this is 10 1/4, 5 1/8. Okay. And then I can just measure out 1.5 inches right there. That's exactly 3 inches. 5 1/8. And I like to put a block on the inside to keep it from ripping out the wood as badly. But you also got to be careful not to drill right through your hand. I'm going to clean up my pencil marks. And now I can install the handle. Oh no, these are not going to be long enough. Dang it. I have to get longer ones. Well, that's kind of a bummer. I guess I could... Because usually the inside piece is not 3/4 of an inch. Usually it's 1/2 inch on drawers. Okay, well, I've got holes drilled. And I'm just going to buy some longer ones and get this piece of hardware installed later. Something that I have been meaning to add to the back side of this is just some of these little corner brackets. These little corner brackets will just help beef up the strength of that back edge. And this will be hidden under a mattress, so you won't see this. I also thought about doing it on the inside, but I have the plywood drawer sections going right up to the back, so there's really not any room, not even for this tiny little bracket. But that would be another place to put it, and there'd be nothing wrong with that, and it would be out of sight. I'm going to go out 20 inches from either side. Yeah, that's a little bit of peace of mind for me. It's not going to add a ton of strength, but just a little bit more. I'm really not too worried about this edge, but I just slightly worried. So, tiny bit worried. The width is going to be the same as this one, 59 3/4. Will be my cut with edge banding. It's going to go right from the top of this platform to the top of this edge. (29 13/16). Check both sides. 29 13. And so, let's see. So I want a space at the top. I'm not going to edge band the bottom piece. And so I'm gonna make it pretty snug, and if I need to chop off any, I'll take it from the bottom, which won't have the edge banding. So I'm gonna leave a full 1/8 inch at the top. So 11. So 29 11/16 will be my cut. It's always so awkward. This isn't even a full 4x8 sheet. It's still super awkward. Needs to be, what did I say? 59 3/4. So 59 3/4. So what I'm going to do is kind of center it, and then 59 3/4. Yeah, this is what I'm gonna do. Ooh. So generally, you don't want the fence really close to the saw blade, and the longer the piece is on the other end, the more it's easy to get it off and have it just not really work out very well. But I'm gonna risk it. I've got about 8 inches on either side. So I'm going to go 8 inches close to the fence to get my cross cuts that I need. Yeah, these are kind of funny cuts. It's pretty rare I need to cut close to 60 inches for a cross cut. My fence only goes out to 52 inches. So let's see how square it is. Well, that's pretty stinking square. Yep, that's looking good. I'm going to do it this way. Quarter. Fif 59 3/4 inches. So I'm going to measure from this side, 59 3/4. Okay. I want to be on the outside tooth, so from this edge to get to the outside tooth, I need 8 7/8. 8 7/8. 8 7/8, and I'm going on the outside tooth. My final should be pretty close. A little too long. 59 13. It's probably still gonna be okay. Let's see, 66 3/4 on the dot. Oh, 66 3/4 on the dot. All right, well, you know, that's actually pretty good. Okay, now I can edge band 3 of the sides and get it installed. So, this thing is gonna go like this. Look at that. And this hinge is 48 inches long, so I can measure 24 to be the center. And then I know this is 60 between the two edges here, so I'm going to go 30 inches. Double check that. Yep, 30 inches. So all I do is take my 2 center points now and line them up. Yeah, I think that's going to be just fine. Okay. Now hopefully that's going to be strong enough. Okay, so this whole length I need to be 78 inches, right on the dot. So right there, I'm right at 78. So this next piece needs to be 26 7/8. 26 7/8. All 4 edges get edge banding on this one. diagonals. 65 and 9/16 here under. Okay, so it's a little bit off, but I think it's going to be just fine. This is the less crucial piece to be square. The other panel was more important to be square, and it turned out pretty square. It's important to not let it sit for too long either, otherwise you'll burn your edge banding, mess up the finish a little bit, so gotta keep it moving. Alright, that edge turned out really nicely. These are pretty low consequence edges, so I'm not too worried about if I get a little bit of tear out with this guy. Next side, 1 of 4. Final side. Oh, I get new screws actually, so I can install those real quick. Just like how I did this piano hinge over here, I'm just going to find the center point. So check on the piano hinge, find the center point, which is 24. Line up those 2 points. After I checked that initial fit with just a few screws in place, I found that the hinge actually needed to be adjusted down slightly. So instead of being perfectly centered from the 2 pieces, I actually shifted the hinge down slightly. You can kind of see it in the image that it's not quite perfectly centered, and that allows for when it's folded up for the top part of the hinge will be lower and it won't be in the way, versus when it was centered, the top door made contact with the hinge and wouldn't close completely flush. All right, all done. Now it should be weakest right around the edges of these, but I kind of want to test its strength and walk around. Okay, that seems plenty strong. The idea of this is that it is a way to access the storage in here too. All right. I'm going to put a magnetic stop right here and right there, and it's just going to be a quick temporary click hold, but I'm also going to have latches to make it really secure. It's important to get the spacing at the bottom and make sure that it's the same at the top. Actually, no, I'm going to go down 1.5. And then to get the magnet on the door, the screw has a tapered hole so that the screw head sits flat. But what I'm going to do is turn that around the opposite way it's supposed to go, put it on the magnet, and then take the screw head, plop it right in the center of that divot so that it's sticking out. And then I'm going to take my door, and I'm just going to really easily just punch a hole right there, and then I know exactly where to drill my hole. And this will be offset a little bit because I don't want it sticking out over the edge like this. So it will come in just slightly, but not too much. And voila! I have a magnetic latch. Next side. So I did move the Murphy bed cabinet into the bedroom, and I forgot that I needed to install these outlets, actually. So these outlets are gonna go on either side. One's gonna go right here, and one's gonna go right here. I think it's a nice feature to have with the bed. So this is optional, but I left space. This was part of the idea behind having this space right here, is that I'll have enough space for one of these outlets to fit inside that cavity right there. So I'm gonna have 3 inches of space back there, and this really only goes back about 2 inches. So I'll have plenty of room for this cable, or for this cord, I mean. So I'm gonna say 33.5. And I need to make the hole just under 1 3/4, but 1 3/4 will give me a little wiggle room. I'm gonna set it back 3 1/4. About 5 inches, 5, and I'm gonna go 1/16 over. I'm going to use my jigsaw to cut out this hole, but I'm going to get a starting hole first with this drill bit. Oops, don't like that. Jeez. Well, I should have been more careful than that. So I have, it's kind of a reverse bit, but what this allows for is a pretty clean cut on the surface that you're cutting on. So I don't care about it being all cut out on the inside as far as little fuzzies, a little bit of tear out. I just want it to be clean on this side so that any of that tear out doesn't show up when I cover it with these little ears, this little bit of trim that goes around the outlet. Ah, there we go. Nice perfect fit. Oh, actually, I'm gonna reverse this. Maybe like that. Now before I screw this in, I want to get my cord all the way to the back. Okay, so I got a stick here, kind of flexible with some tape, and I'm gonna tape this to right here. In place. Okay, now fit it through. Okay, now I just plug this guy in right there. And then now I can do the exact same thing to the other side. This little green dot right here is showing we have power. So now I'm going to slide this back, and this project is finished. And now to show you the final product. Unlock the 2 pins. Done. If this is a project you would like to do, hopefully this video gives you enough info that you can do it on your own. And if you want a PDF of the exact plans so that you have kind of a paper guide that can give you a cut list and everything you need to get these exact dimensions, I'll have that PDF available. I'll put a link in the description below where you can purchase the plans and download them and print them out or put them on your phone or iPad or computer or whatever you want to read those plans off of. So, okay, until next time, enjoy building stuff.